Come on, ChampionsCentre, who's excited to be at church this morning? Come on. Man, it is so good to be with you. You can take your seats. I need to just take a minute to say hello to our DuPont campus and our online community that's going to be watching. And Bellevue, we love you guys. It's so good to be with you. And this is pre-conference weekend. Who's excited for conference this week? It's going to be an amazing week. And so first and foremost, we got to give a shout out and just put your hands together for all of you who are on team this week and making everything happen this week. We love you guys. Thank you for your investment this week. I've got to say, I don't just say that as a pastor, but our church, we actually have almost 40 people coming from our team. So our staff and some of our key team leaders are coming to hang out this week as well, and the investment, this isn't just a conference. I want you guys to realize that what is happening this week, what you're doing this week, is an investment into so many churches that are helping move those churches forward into the destiny that God has for them. So we're not just gathering for a conference, for another moment. I believe this week we are gathering as there's a massive investment in these churches to step into everything that God has for all of us, but those churches as well. And so what you're doing, it's not a light thing, it's a major thing. So thank you for everything that you're doing this week. And then I've got to just show honor where honor is due. Pastor Kevin and Sheila, we love you guys so much. And come on. My wife was born and raised in the 253, and come on, somebody. And then I stole her, and we got out of here. Her parents were pumped about that. But we moved out a little while ago, but we love it here. This is home to us, and we've watched from afar and up close Pastor Kevin and Sheila and how they've led over the years. And I don't know if you know this, but authority is built on a couple different things: character, integrity, and consistency. Right? Character is doing what you say you're going to do. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do when no one's looking. And consistency is keeping on doing what you say you're going to do. And there comes authority, right? And so with that, Kevin and Sheila, they've built they've got this stature and this authority about them as they've gone years and years of doing that: character, integrity, and consistency. And so I want to honor you guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you for the investment into our lives. Thank you for the blood, sweat, and tears that you've laid out here in the great Northwest. We love you guys. We're so appreciative. And I count it as an honor and a privilege to be here today. So we love you guys. Can we just show some love to Pastor Kevin and Sheila just one more time? Well, I want to get into it today, deal with a subject that I've taken some time to think about as we've gone through a lot of different moments in our life. We were on staff at a church in Phoenix for a while and then planted in Salt Lake City, Utah. There's Mormons there, and so just a heads up. We're not, just for clarity's sake. But over the course of planting a church and developing the church and serving and loving a city, we've gone through some moments that I like to call thresholds. And thresholds are a part of everyday life. Water reaches a threshold at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit as it begins to freeze. All right, we know that roughly at 700 miles an hour, the threshold of sound is breached in what is known as the sound barrier. And conventionally, we are told that the threshold of space begins at roughly 100 kilometers or 62 miles above sea level. A typical pregnancy reaches this threshold at 38 to 40 weeks, but I'm pretty sure the ladies in the house would beg to differ on that. All right? And a recent study done by a Canadian research group, they found that the average attention span reaches a threshold at 8 seconds, having dropped from 12, meaning that no one in here is currently listening to me. So figure out the message, we'll go from there. So today, I want to speak to you from this subject: thresholds, the art of pushing through. Thresholds, the art of pushing through. And before we get into the rest of it, would you just pray with me one more time this morning? Father, we love you. We thank you for your word. We thank you that it's alive, it is powerful, and it's active. And so right now in this place, we submit ourselves to the authority of your word. May these be your words for our lives, not mine. Move me out of the way, God. We want to hear your voice. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your presence that is here right now in this place. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, you are in our midst. And so this pre-conference weekend, I pray we don't just go through the motions, God, but I pray that right now our hearts are changed, We are transformed, we are challenged, we are renewed, we are refreshed. And so that life can move forward, so that church can move forward. And would you help us today learn how to push through thresholds? In Jesus' mighty name. Come on, and ChampionsCentre shouted, Amen. Thresholds, they're everywhere. They're a part of everyday life. Yet when it comes to your life, my life, I wonder if sometimes we don't fully understand the importance of thresholds. I think sometimes we can look at thresholds and come on, let's just be honest here, like a little bit of a therapy moment. For most of us, we actually don't like thresholds. We don't like the tension that comes in thresholds. It's that moment where you know, I'm about to cross over into something else. That's what a threshold really is at the end of the day. It's the line in the sand that says, if you cross over this, you are now entering into a new moment, new territory, new circumstance, new situation, whatever it may be. And for a lot of us, I think we look at thresholds in a negative way. We look at it because we view them through the lens of pain. We view them through the lens of insecurity. We view them through the lens of change. Come on, how many of us love change? Not too many of us. You're like, I hate change. Change the color on the wall, that's it, but don't change anything else. There was a study done that actually tried to help people understand why they were so adverse to change. And at the end of the day, they found that people don't have an issue with change because they don't like change. They have an issue with change because they view change as loss. It's very different. For many of us, we don't see change. We change our pants daily, hopefully. And other things. So change isn't really that big of a deal to us. We perceive change as loss. What are we losing? And for many of us, when we're looking at a threshold, we see this as I'm going to lose something. But as we look at the Bible, we realize that thresholds are a part of the journey of faith. Come on, somebody. They're a part of the journey of life. And God is constantly bringing us to these, what I believe, threshold moments, sometimes daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. There's these, and we got to be the type of people that can reach a threshold moment and decide right there, by faith, I'm gonna cross over. By faith, I'm gonna push through. By faith, I'm gonna move into everything that God has for me. I am going to cross a threshold. I'm gonna cross the threshold. So we've got to learn how to push through thresholds. They are necessary for our life. And so in order to do, we've got to be aware of the necessary commitment, the required attitude, and the posture of faith that is needed to cross thresholds. And so I want to take a look at some truths concerning thresholds today that understanding them will help equip us to push through them. And to do this, we're going to walk through quite a bit of the book of Joshua, because this is an amazing threshold moment that this young leader would lead the children of Israel into as they are getting ready to step into their promised land, all right? And so I need your help this morning as we look at these truths. If you would help me out, we do this at home in Salt Lake City, Utah. If you'd shout number one. Come on, everybody shout number one. This is the first thing I want us to realize is that thresholds represent significant moments of transition in our lives. Thresholds represent significant moments of transition in our lives. Watch what Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9 says. We're going to just read the first couple verses. It says this: after the death of Moses, you already know it's not a good situation. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, said this: Moses, my servant, is dead. That's a great wake-up call. Thank you, Lord, for being clear on it. He's dead. Now you and all the people prepare to, here it is, cross over the Jordan to the land that I am giving the Israelites. He's asking them to cross a threshold. At one point or another, we are going to face the inevitable transition. All right, this looks like moving states, shifting jobs, changing positions, starting relationships, ending relationships. Maybe it's more significant, like the loss of a loved one, a divorce, becoming an empty nester, the start of a journey with Jesus. They are all transitionary moments. And I've come to realize that the thresholds that we face in life, they represent significant moments of transition. And how we handle them is of the utmost importance. Because I think sometimes we can look like we can fall over the threshold in a hot mess. Right? Come on, let's just be honest. How many of us have gone through a transition before, but we did it in a dumpster fire way? Right? We just went rolling across that thing, looking all kinds of gnarly. Like we did not handle that threshold well. So it's not just about crossing the threshold, it's about how we handle the crossing of the threshold. Because I think there's actually a lot that comes, like the way that we represent Jesus, the way that we work through these thresholds is just as important as how we roll across those thresholds. Come on, parents, our kids are watching how we do our threshold moments. Our churches are watching how we do our threshold moments. Our bosses are watching how we do our threshold moments. Our friends, our enemies, everyone, they are watching these threshold moments in our life. So we've got to understand that thresholds represent significant moments of transition in our life. But here's what's really cool. If you continue on, watch what it says in Joshua 1:3. It says, I have given you every place where the sole of your foot treads, just as I had promised Moses. Your territory will be from the wilderness, Lebanon, to the great river, the Euphrates River, and all the land of the Hittites, and west to the Mediterranean Sea. No one will be able to stand against you. As long as you live, I will be with you, just as I was with Moses. I will not leave you or abandon you. Every transition moment that we go through in life, every threshold moment, there is a promise that is attached to it. So we got to understand, we're not just crossing thresholds for the sake of crossing thresholds. There is a promise that we're stepping into. Joshua was called to lead the children of Israel step over a threshold, and he could do it with confidence. He could do it with security. He could do it with some pizzazz. Why? Because there was a promise that was attached to the threshold. That's what's so amazing about God, is that every threshold that he's moving us toward, every threshold of life that we're navigating and walking through, there's a promise that we're stepping into. There's promise everywhere. And some of us are experiencing transition right now. And it has us feeling all kinds of weird. Insecure, scared, come on, unsure, out of place, off balance. But if we can anchor ourselves in the fact, not the assumption, not the idea, not the oh maybe, but the fact, the truth, that there is a promise attached to crossing the threshold, now we're going to step into something new. See, if we see our transitionary moments, our threshold moments in a negative nature, we can still be faith-filled and expectant because there's a promise attached to it. This is why God tells Joshua and the children to be strong and courageous. Come on, I want to encourage us today, church. Be strong and courageous. I don't know what threshold you're currently facing. I don't know what God's asking you to cross over. I don't know what's happening relationally. I don't know what's happening in your job, in the atmosphere of your life and in your faith. But God is saying there is a promise on the other side of your threshold. All we need to do is just take one step and realize, come on, I can do this. I can step over that threshold. So important for us to understand. I think these transition moments are important for us to navigate. They lead us to conversations that we wouldn't otherwise have. My wife and I, we've gone through threshold moments in our marriage. We've been married, we'll be married 15 years in January, right? They've been amazing years, mainly because of me. So, just play. We've gone through transitionary moments, threshold moment. We had one kid, threshold moment. We had 2 kids, threshold moment. We had 3 kids. I don't know if we crossed that threshold yet, but it's made some transition, and we've had conversations that we've never had before. Why? Because we were in transition moments. We were in threshold moments. It leads to opportunities for learning and growth. It creates a more precise focus in our lives that we wouldn't otherwise have. Transition leads to change that we otherwise wouldn't experience. And these threshold transitionary moments lead to greater impact than we've ever had before. So we've got to understand that these threshold moments, they show us of the great importance of transitionary moments in our lives. Come on, everybody shout number 2. Second thing is this that we need to understand is that thresholds necessitate wisdom-based assessment and preparation in our lives. Thresholds necessitate, don't just ask for it, they necessitate wisdom-based assessment and preparation in our lives. Joshua chapter 2, verse 1 says, Joshua, son of Nun, secretly went 2 men as spies from Acacia Grove, saying, go and scout out the land, especially Jericho. So they left, and they came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Then you fast forward to Joshua chapter 3, verses 1 to 6. Joshua started early in the morning and left the Acacia Grove with all the Israelites. They went as far as the Jordan and stayed there before crossing. After 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, when you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, your God, carried by the Levitical priests, you are to break camp and follow it. All right? And so you have this moment where there's this reality starting to take place that Joshua is having to prepare and use wisdom and assess what's going on. And then he says this, but keep a distance, verse 4, keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between yourselves and the ark. Don't go near it so that, watch this, so you can see the way to go, for you haven't traveled this way before. You haven't traveled this way before. And so threshold moments necessitate wisdom-based assessment and preparation in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I feel like the world that we're living in right now, sometimes we just feeling our way through our thresholds instead of wisdom our way through our threshold moments. Come on, you ever been there before? I'm just gonna wing it. Right? I just want to go. It feels so good. Right? Have you ever just wung it? I don't even know if it's a word. Wung it. Have you ever been in a winging position before? And on the other side, you're like, why did I wing that? Come on, how many of you are glad that we don't just wing our driving? Come on, can I get a witness at church today? How many of you are glad that a parent didn't wake up today and went, hey, he turned 15, just give him the keys, let him wing it, we'll see what happens. Said no one ever. Come on, Bellevue, you know what I'm talking about. We don't do that. Why? Because at the end of the day, we want our kids who are going to get the keys, we want them to have wisdom-based assessment happening. We want them to learn some things. We want them to prep for some things. Come on, if you're engaged in here today, or if you're a dude who's got a ring in his pocket and you're about ready to pop the question, I want to encourage you, get with some pastors, get with some leaders, get some wisdom-based assessment going on in your life. Why? Because then you can have a successful marriage. When we planted in Salt Lake City, we didn't just wing it. Hey guys, we're just going to throw church together and everything. I mean, there were a few moments. But we went in with a plan. God put that in our heart back in 2001. God dropped this idea in our heart to plant in Salt Lake City, Utah. And y'all, it's a different place to do church. So we couldn't go in there and just be like, oh, we're going to wing it. It'll be fun. No. To study, and we had to plan, and we had to prepare. Listen to Proverbs chapter 4. I love the way the Bible is so plain about everything. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 7. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Come on. And whatever you get insight, prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. Check this out. Wisdom is the crown of a life that is lived well. Charles Spurgeon says it like this: wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is not to be wise. Many men know a great deal and are all the greater fools for it. There is no fool so great a fool as a knowing fool. But to know how to use knowledge is to have wisdom. Come on. In other words, wisdom should lead us into right preparation, and God is a fan of both. When we are standing at the thresholds of life, wisdom and preparation is a necessity. So here's my encouragement: get wisdom. Allow it to define our preparation for crossing the threshold in front of you. Come on, everybody, shout number 3. Third thing is this: thresholds produce a posture of worship and thankfulness in our lives. Joshua 4, verse 1 through 7. After the entire nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord spoke to Joshua: choose 12 men from the people, 1 man for each tribe, and command them. Take 12 stones from this place in the middle of the Jordan where the priests are standing, carry them with you, and set them down at the place where you spend the night. So Joshua summoned the 12 men. he had selected from the Israelites 1 man from each tribe, and he said to them, go across to the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. Each of you lift up a stone onto his shoulder, 1 for each of the Israelite tribes, so that this will be a sign among you. In the future, come on, watch this. When your children ask you, what do these stones mean? What does this altar mean? What does this worship mean? You should tell them the water of the Jordan was cut off in front of the ark of the Lord's covenant. And when it crossed the Jordan's water was cut off. Therefore, these stones will always be a memorial for the Israelites. When we cross thresholds, worship and thankfulness should be our posture. You know, what's interesting is that so many times we will cross a threshold and we'll fail to worship the one who helped us get through it. I love worship. I love when we look at threshold moments that we just got to stop and we got to be thankful. And that's why these moments that we're like, this isn't just singing songs. This isn't just like a kumbaya moment at the beginning of church. Because I don't know about you, but there is days, there are months, there's years where I've walked into church and I've crossed some thresholds during the week. I've gone through some things during that month. I've gone through some things during that year. And I've got no other option before me but to lift my hands and raise my voice and shout it out and sing it out. Why? Because my God has helped me get through those thresholds. So some of us got to walk in church just carrying a stone. Put it down. Not literally. Security might have an issue with that. Just putting that out there. But threshold moments, they cause us, they should cause us, they should produce a posture of worship and thankfulness in our lives. Man, we can walk into church, we can walk into work, we can walk into our homes with a posture of worship. What is going on with you? I crossed the threshold this week. I crossed the threshold in my marriage. I crossed the threshold in my health. I crossed the threshold in my job. Whatever it may be, and then when we have this posture of worship and this posture of praise, people don't see us. They see the Jesus who helped us through that. They see the Jesus who helped us cross over. We're pushing through. We're pushing through. Thresholds produce a posture of worship and thankfulness in our lives. We're constantly trying to teach our kids how to say thank you. Come on, your parents know what I'm talking about. Right? It doesn't come naturally. You give them something, they look at you, they walk away. Like, whose kid is this? Right? So and even our 2-year-old, we have a 2-year-old right now, we'll hand her something and she looks at us and then just like walks away. Like, that's like our job to hand her things. What do you say? Thank you? All right. Thank you. Like, just once. Come on, parents. How many of you would like, just once, you give your kids something, and all of a sudden they just turn around. Oh, thus lovely Father, thank thee for giving thee thy bounty to which you have earned. Never going to happen. But we got to train ourselves. We've got to train ourselves to say thank you. We've got to train ourselves to live in a posture of worship. For me, in my house, we want to live in that place. For our church, we want to live in that place. We don't want a day to go by where we're not thankful for the God who has helped me cross thresholds. So thresholds in our lives, they position us, right? They produce a posture of worship and thankfulness in our lives. Last one's this. Come on, everybody, shout number 4. Last one's this. Thresholds, this is the one you're all going to hate, okay? Just like as a preface. Thresholds create purpose-induced pain in our lives. Thresholds create purpose-induced pain in our lives. Joshua chapter 5, verses 2 through 9. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelite men again." Now, let me just pause there. This is not a good church PR campaign that is happening, right? Hey, all, come next weekend at church, circumcision weekend. Like, not gonna, like, it's not good. Media department, stop. So Joshua made the flint knives, and he circumcised the Israelite men. This is the reason Joshua circumcised them. All the people who came, the Bible's being very clear, all the people who came out of Egypt who were males, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness along the way after they'd come out of Egypt. Though all the people who came out were circumcised, none of the people born in the wilderness along the way were circumcised after they had come out of Egypt. For the Israelites wandered in the wilderness 40 years until all the nation's men of war who had come out of Egypt had died off because they did not obey the Lord. So the Lord vowed never to let them see the land he had sworn to their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. He raised up their sons in their place. It was these that Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised since they had not been circumcised along the way. There's a lot of circumcision talking here, okay? Verse 8, after the entire nation had been circumcised, they stayed where they were at in camp until they recovered, as one does, okay? Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the disgrace from Egypt from you, therefore that place is still called Gilgal today. Here's what I want us to hear. If you're taking notes, write this down. God needed warriors that had experience with pain, not children that had only experienced protection. And that is why thresholds create purpose-induced pain in our lives. See, it was incumbent upon God's fatherly nature that the allowance of pain was used to build the necessary strength required for the children of Israel. Pain's going to produce something. In his book, The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis writes, we cannot ignore even pleasure, but pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And sometimes I feel like we look at our pain in this overtly negative way. Pain is an indicator for sure. And we can say, well, my pain right now is telling me something. And many of us go to the negative side of things. But I want to encourage us today to look at our pain a little bit differently, because I've found that many times the pain that I'm experiencing in my life is purpose-induced pain. That it's not because something negative is happening, but it's actually because God is bringing me across a threshold. He's taken me into something. When my wife gave birth to our children, there was pain, for sure. But it meant something. It meant that promise was coming. It meant that something amazing was coming. It meant that there was a future and a hope that was coming. Something that we had been dreaming about and planning for and believing for. It's purpose-induced pain. You know, I CrossFit sometimes. I've ended on this. And one day, I was chasing this lady down as we were running the last part of our workout. And I vowed to myself, since it was all girls in my class and then me, and I was dead last at this point, I vowed to myself, I was like, I will not let this lady beat me. Let's just be real about it. It's like, there's no way. Everybody else had finished. My wife had finished. And I'm just out there just chasing after this lady. And it was in that moment, as I'm chasing this lady, I'm just running and I'm running and I'm running. And I got it in my mind. I was like, how many of you have been there when you're working out and all of a sudden, like, the lactic acid builds up and that pain's starting to come in, and like you're just like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this, and I don't know if I can push through, and then you start seeing white stars. Is that just me, right? So I'm running, I'm going, and as I'm chasing this lady down, it was like all of a sudden I had the tigers in the background, and I'm like, yeah! And then you get to that point where you reach the threshold. I'm either gonna pass out, die, or I'm gonna push through. I'm gonna push through. And it was in that moment, I decided in that moment, I don't care what happens, I don't care if I fall over, I am going to push through this moment. So I started running, I chased that lady down. Right? And then I passed her. And I looked at her. Kept on going. And I was running, and I went into that, and I ran into the big room where we do our workout, and I fell on the ground, and I was so excited. Why? Because I beat that lady. I went through my threshold. I pushed through. And the Bible tells us this, that the joy set before Jesus, he endured the cross. He kept on walking. He kept on carrying. He kept on moving towards what he had to move towards. Why? Because his threshold was joy. There was a purpose. There was a plan. There was something that he was going to. It was you. It was me. Come on, somebody. We're all sitting in threshold moments. We all have these things that are in front of us. We're crossing over. We're pushing through. Man, I thank God that he saw the cross as the joy set before him. Not the responsibility, not the have to, the joy. And I wonder today if we can reframe the head and the heart. And as we look at the thresholds that are in front of us, if we can push through, if we can cross over, if we can allow the purpose-induced pain to bring us into new territory, promised lands, promised places, because everywhere you place your foot, he is with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous. I want to ask everybody to bow your head and close your eyes in this moment. I don't know what brought you in here today, but one of the greatest threshold moments that I've ever experienced in my life is when I first made the decision to follow Jesus. Not just know about him, but to follow him. And so what I want to do right now in this moment is I want to give us an opportunity for those of us who came to church today, the promised land that God has for us. We got to first make a decision if we're going to allow him to lead us there. This is the threshold moment. Some of us are sitting right here, right now, knowing, man, I got to make this decision to follow Jesus. I need this Jesus who leads me and guides me and protects me. And so what we're going to do all together today, so we don't leave anybody out, is we're going to pray a prayer, saying yes to Jesus. There's nothing really fancy in these words, but rather the heart from which it comes. And maybe today you would say, man, I want to cross that threshold. I want to say yes to Jesus. Make this your prayer today. So come on, everybody together so we don't leave anybody out. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Would you pray this after me? Everybody say, Jesus, I'm giving you everything. I'm giving you my past. I'm giving you my right now. And I'm putting my future in your hands. Save me. Change me. Make me new. And I declare in this moment that I'm going to follow you all the days of my life. In Jesus' mighty name. With every head bowed and every eye closed, no one looking around in this moment. If you prayed that prayer for the first time today, come on. Right now, would you just lift up your hand for me? I just want to know that you were with us today. Come on. Is there anybody in here today that's saying thank you? Come on. Anybody else today that's saying that? That's my prayer. That's my statement of faith. Awesome. Come on. Anybody else today that would say, you know what? That's for me. I'm crossing this threshold. I'm saying yes to Jesus. Fantastic. Come on. Can we lift our head, open our eyes? Can we give all those that prayed that prayer? Come on. Can we celebrate? Can we put our hands together? We love you, ChampionsCentre. Thanks for having us.